What up, Steel fans? That's Matty P with Shannon White doing a Steelers Global Perspective live, something we don't get to do too often, but it cooked up this week. It was able to happen, and here we are. Shannon, I watched you beating the drums in the background music. How are you doing today, mate? You look like you're firing and ready to go.
Oh, I am. I'm fired up and ready. I was trying to keep the beat, the rhythm going there, but this is a special live show, and so I'm looking forward to it, and some questions and some good discussion.
Well, that's it. And look, obviously, from the Steelers' perspective, they've cut Neal. The big headline, as we sort of come out with, is that they're planning to meet with Russell Wilson. That could mean anything and everything. Could mean nothing at all as well. Could be smoke and mirrors. If you're on some people on that Justin Fields train, if you're on the Justin Fields train, is this a negotiating tactic? Because they reckon that's pretty much down to two teams. Now, when you look at that, there's a heap of players that have been cut. There's a lot of discussion out of the combine. We're going to try and cover all of that and more over the next sort of 40, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Obviously, take a bunch of questions in the live chat. You guys always cook it up in the live chat, so please ask those questions. Steer us in the direction you want the show. That's the point of us doing the lives. But let's just kick off there. I mean, Russell Wilson, what do you make of this? I mean, he did have the 26 TDs, the 8 interceptions. You've said he can be a team spirit killer on other shows we've done together. At the same time, you said we've got to think outside the box. So how do you react just to the idea that the Steelers are exploring every option?
Well, I'm happy about that. I mean, this is the things that they did not do between Bradshaw and Big Ben. And it was all just, close to the vest, very predictable. Colbert, even after they got drafted Ben, Colbert was always so predictable. And the offseason was so boring. That is no longer the case. And it shouldn't be, because the NFL has changed. It's evolved. You have to be bold and make big moves to, sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. But if not, you stay irrelevant, which the Steelers have been now for a decade. Everybody knows that I feel like that Russell Wilson can be a team chemistry cancer. That's what I call him. Because his performance on the field is still, one of the better quarterbacks. His numbers are not bad. And we've seen last year, he had some pretty big games for Denver. But he's no longer a winner. And his teammates do not support him. It's like there's a disconnect between him and his teammates. People accuse that of Ben later in his career, that he was obviously, the face of the franchise, and he didn't totally embrace some of the younger guys and everything. Well, I think it's much worse with Russell Wilson. But when, what are the Steelers going to do to be relevant this year? Something has to happen at the quarterback position. Now, this could all be, the only reason they're even having this discussion is because they're talking about he could be league minimum, veteran minimum salary because of the situation. Denver's having to eat all that money. If somebody's going to reap the benefits, if Russell Wilson can still play, even to the level he played last year. But it could be a negotiating ploy to drive, to push the Chicago Bears to play their hand. I mean, the longer it goes, the less they're going to get for Justin Fields. Yeah. So they might be like, well, we better hurry up, because Steelers are one of the one or two teams interested in Fields, supposedly. Steelers might get him for a 4th round pick.
But my question there is, if the rest of the league is not going to trade for Justin Fields, and yes, the argument could be it's about the compensation right now, that's why they're not trading. Yeah. If that's all he's worth in a 4th, should you really be going there?
Well, but again, the big word with Fields is potential. When you talk about running, throwing, just physical attributes, he's better than anybody in this class.
The problem, though,
but we don't know about, can he read progressions? Can he, between the ears? That's the thing. But he's also been, just like I say about Kenny Pickett, he's been with multiple coordinators in a bad system. One year he has 1,100 yards rushing or 1,200. Then you come back last year and they're like, well, we don't want you to run so much. You're going to have to throw from the pocket. Well, he had 2 games. He had 4 touchdown passes.
Yeah.
Other times he looks totally handcuffed. He did not look comfortable. So I see, again, if we're thinking outside the box, you make a move for a guy like him because unless you plan on having a 3-14 season, you're not going to get a chance to draft a talent like that. And you would at least have competition for Kenny Pickett. Now, on the flip side, this talk about Russell Wilson and Fields could be forcing Mason Rudolph for when Monday rolls around. You need to hurry up and make a decision.
Yeah.
And are you going to come and back to Pittsburgh and compete for the starting position? So there's a lot of gamesmanship that could be going on right now.
See, I don't see Russell Wilson. Let's say that Russell Wilson wanted to come to the Steelers. And everyone can take me on this, but he doesn't fit the Steelers for me, right? Now that's going to sound like ludicrous. He needs a line. What do we keep talking about? The tackle in the center position. Who's snapping him the football? Who's playing right tackle? And if they move Deontay, right, who's he throwing to besides George Pickens and maybe Calvin Austin and maybe Allen Robinson, who you're not a fan of bringing back, I know anyway, right? Unless they renegotiate that deal, and even then you think he's too slow. Also, Russell Wilson said, I want to win 2 Super Bowls in the next 4 years. Now, even with my black and goldest goggles on, right, the Steelers lining up right now to win 2 Super Bowls in 4 years. I'd love that to be the case, but I think we're at least 1, probably 2, maybe even 3 draft classes away from that. So with that in mind, I get doing the due diligence, and I'm very happy about that as well. But I just don't see how that gets us any closer. You make the playoffs and stuff like that. Maybe you go on a run and it's a one-hit wonder, maybe, right? But I think there's too many issues at either starters or at depth position. Then I think about Justin Fields. And the only other thing I'll say there is the difference of bringing him in versus someone in this draft class, even though he may be a better starter ready to go, is that you're gonna have to take the 5th-year option. You're up for $25 million with him, right? And I don't want the Steelers doing that. So I'm hoping that the game plan, as much as some fans don't like this, I'm hoping the game plan is Kenny Pickett and Mason and continuing to build the line and lean on the run game. And let's let the Arthur Smith. Let's let some guys get used to the Arthur Smith offense. Let's see if Kenny can adjust to that. If he can't, then he's done. We can then definitely say that because Ryan Tannehill even played well in the Arthur Smith offense, right? Mm-hmm. So hopefully Pickett, can do just as a little bit of that. I do think it's interesting. I did see one cut today before we go over to the combine side of things. I saw one signing. Miami Dolphins have signed Jonnu Smith. Everyone's been saying Jonnu Smith will come to the Steelers because he went to the Falcons. He had a great time in Tennessee to the point that the Patriots went and signed him for a massive contract. I think it was 3 years, $40 million or something. I'm kind of glad to see that because I didn't want to see him at the Steelers. I loved him coming out of Tennessee. I thought the Patriots slightly overpaid him, but I thought it was a smart move for them at the same time when they got Hunter Henry, who I also really like. But then it never really eventuated to much, and I don't fully love it. So that was interesting. I also heard that Chuks Okorafor has apparently agreed to a deal with the Patriots, which is interesting because last year I had a video out on this channel where I said trading him and a 4th potentially for David Andrews, the center from the Patriots. So I am very interested to see that Chuks actually has apparently agreed to terms with the New England Patriots. Kyle Duggar, the safety, this is a good segue for us as well into the safety position, apparently will receive the transition tag, Kyle Duggar, the safety. So that's interesting because the Steelers had obviously released Keanu Neal in the last 24 hours, depending on, or maybe 48 hours, depending on when those of you are not watching this live. That Kyle Duggar was someone that you and I are really interested about the Steelers potentially bringing in. So that's a top safety that's now off the board. I think things are certainly happening. It is we are definitely full speed into off-season stuff.
But I wanted to say something else about the quarterback position real quick.
Yeah,
is I know what Russell Wilson is saying, but if you really look at it, the market for him is the same as Fields. It's very small. I don't think there's going to be that
see,
much.
I think there's a higher market on Russ.
Well, there is because of his salary and his experience, but I still think that there's nobody who's a Super Bowl contender that's necessarily going to be handing him the keys. I mean, he could have a lamp and he'd rub it and get a genie out of it, and he might get all his dreams to come true. But right now, he's standing there with an empty hand. He everybody else has the leverage right now. He's getting his money regardless.
See, I think
but where he's going to go to play, Pittsburgh is a place that has the history, has Mike Tomlin, has a lot of the things he's looking for. Now, I'm not for it, as you know, but all I'm saying is that they have there could be 3 different games going on here right now, and we probably won't know the true extent of what the games are until Monday through Wednesday.
the game might be Kirk Cousins.
No, I think that I heard a rumor that he was going back to Minnesota.
That's what,
2 years and $66 million or something.
I mean, Kevin O'Connell was very, very confident of that in the combine interview that he did with Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah. He pretty much said it without saying it. Well,
they had a really good relationship.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I see Russ in Las Vegas. You put Russ into the Vegas Raiders right now with their wide receivers, with the tight ends that they've got, if they can bring back Josh Jacobs, I see that. I see that really, really working. I just, I don't know. But Toddy brings up a really good point, and I think this is a good segue into the combine, because I think there are a number of guys at all these positions that showed out, so it's worthy of talking to it. We need a center, a tackle, a safety, a cornerback, a DT.
Yeah.
And a wide receiver. I'd probably add to that mix. So we may as well bring in Russ. And I kind of
get inside linebacker.
And inside linebacker. But I kind of get it. You may as well we got to fill something, so you may as well fill in one of the blanks, right? When you're doing a crossword, you've got to start with one word, right? Before you can keep going. I guess let's start off with the combine. Now, I know you wrote a really interesting article with Fan First Sports around Keon Coleman and Worthy and the 40 times and reading too much into 40-yard times. It's just something that Daniel Jeremiah has been talking about all week on his combine wrap-ups on Move the Sticks, where he talks about you need to evaluate the tape as well. What you want is for the tape to be good, and then you marry that with a combine performance, right? But you should always look at the tape over the combine, because some guys have a different play speed to what they're going to run in a 40-yard time. That all being said, you and I have talked at length about Frazier, at length about Fisk. We did some of our wrap-up stuff last week on that. But if I'm going to sort of give you 5 or 6 names, 5 or 6 opportunities to name some guys that you thought showed out at the combine, who are those 5 or 6 guys, and what positions are they at? Well,
for me, offensive line, I was really focused on the offensive line.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it the night on the podcast, Fiago and Frazier, of course, but Fiontu, from Washington offensive tackle, man, he's his feet, he's so smooth. His footwork looks like a professional already. I think that he's a guy that he's not the road grader that Fiago is, but he is just a complete tackle that would be a huge upgrade for the Steelers.
Yeah.
Especially his pass blocking immediately.
Yeah.
And I think he will only get stronger. I was very impressed with him. There's guys there, Barton, who can play multiple positions on the interior.
Yep.
I
liked him, but I haven't been really talking about him because I just don't.
I'm focusing on the big 3, etc. Yes, because they got to tell everybody I'm tired of I don't want to take Morris. Morris is a free agent now. Morris was a good player, but the fact that he's available now, it's because they're looking and they're like, there's options in the draft, and it's going to be a cheaper option, and we'll have more control, and that's why teams are doing this. They're guys that are former Pro Bowl and all pro players are getting cut because they see with the way the cap is, we need to go cheaper and they're making that move now.
Yeah.
So I'm not interested in bringing in a guy that we'll have for 1 or 2 years. I want to get a guy to solidify the center of that offensive line. And there's at least 2 guys, maybe 3 or 4, that I believe can do that. So, but those guys, we know Peyton Wilson. You know, we've talked about him at length at linebacker. But there's other guys there that I thought was very impressive. You know, Cooper, and then you had Colson, guys that can really upgrade and give them that young guy that they need. Tons of cornerbacks. But if you want one that really impressed me, that I wasn't necessarily expecting, it was Max Milton.
Yes, thank you. I'm on the Max Milton train. That kid out of Rutgers is like...
Yeah, he's the best of that second group.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he's got the size, the thickness.
Yep.
He can play multiple schemes. He's very physical and intense. That's what we love. Yep. And he run an excellent 40 as well. So
I think he surprised a few people, and he had a very good Senior Bowl. So he's one of those guys that like has a good Senior Bowl. Like they said, I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah's defense, and Bucky Brooks has moved the sticks where they talked about defense wrap up at the combine, and they said that Fisk continues his assault on the off season. Well, if that's an assault, I feel like Max Milton's doing a pretty good job at like a special operation or something like that. He's having a good go because I had him coming out of the combine at 6th overall in cornerbacks. But honestly, like, I know the tape's there for Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I almost think
we can't test right now. So
I almost think he's the fifth guy behind. So I've got the list right now for me as Terrion Arnold, Quinion Mitchell, and I'm almost a Mitchell over Arnold guy, but you got to respect the college and where he played. Then you got Wiggins, but
you got to have Wiggins, exactly.
I got worried about Wiggins' size, though. He tested under, but that could be because of the 40-yard and wanting to run a fast speed.
Yeah.
Then you got Ennis Rakestraw Jr. I love the tape from him again. I didn't love everything that he tested. Then I got Kool-Aid. Then I got Max Melton. Then I've got Josh Newton. A lot of people are not as high as I am on Josh Newton. Then I go Lassiter, Kyrie Jackson, Mike Sainstrel. But yeah, Max Melton for me, I feel like he's on. I think he's equal there to Rakestraw, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and I think that he will show that as a pro.
Yeah.
I think he'll show that as a pro. This is the sort of guy you bring in, and within 2 or 3 years, you look back and you're like, how did we not have a first round grade on him? Why was it only a late, second round, early third grade on him? But I thought he had I think he has put himself in contention for teams like the Steelers. And if the Steelers go tackle center or tackle linebacker, first 2 picks, and he's sitting there at like, what is it, 80, 81, 84, sorry, you couldn't not pick him. Like, he's just a... Any other names that caught your eye?
Well, I've named about 4.
Yeah.
Now, wide receivers is so deep. I love Coleman. The fact that he runs everything at full speed and he doesn't have any hesitation against contact, and he trusts his hands. He catches everything clean. So I love that. To me, as I said in the article, it's like a Puka Nacua, a Cooper Kupp. These guys run about the same, but they play much faster. And I believe Coleman will be that way. And he doesn't have to have great separation because he's so big, and he's just going to, like Chase Claypool had no idea how to play to his size. He played like a much smaller man. Whereas Coleman plays like a true power forward. He's like Karl Malone out there. He's throwing guys around, and he's boxing guys out and catching the ball out with that wingspan. So, but then you had guys like Leggetti.
I like him.
What a build, what a frame, and then they had the speed numbers. That was impressive. That you think he could get on top of somebody. Yeah. You had the young man out of Florida.
Ricky Pearsall.
Yes. I thought that he ran better than I thought he was going to. I thought he was more of your possession type guy, more of a Cooper Kupp, but he has a little bit of extra gear there. And then we didn't even talk about Corley because he wasn't there.
Well, and this is interesting because Daniel Jeremiah brought him up in the offense show that did, and he said, like, it's kind of interesting with Corley because if you're a GM and you're high on Corley, you are thrilled. you are absolutely thrilled that he didn't test because, you know, a lot of people with some of how well some of the guys tested, Corley is going to probably fly under the radar for a lot of teams. And I'm sitting there going 84, 84, 84.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it would be great. He fits, again, all these guys I'm talking about fit what the Steelers need, fit Arthur Smith.
That's why I like Leggett. That's why I like Leggett over Coleman. I know you're really high on Coleman.
Yeah.
I just think with what Leggett did, and it's why I'm really high on Roma Dunze. I love that Big G, who you do a show with on the Steel Curtain Network, I love that he's talking about Steelers.
I do not want to trade up for a wide receiver.
I know you don't. I don't know. But I'm just saying, I like the idea that is the type of wide receiver they're going after, right? Like I like that idea because I think.
Well, I love Adonis Mitchell. I mean, to me, you can keep Worthy. Give me Mitchell.
The only thing I'll say about Mitchell as a Longhorns fan, he's going to have to put on a little bit of size to play in the NFL. He's a little bit light, I think. But this is why I like Jalen Polk. I think Jalen Polk, a lot of people are sleeping on Polk. That guy can make every catch. You put Polk and Pickens either side of each other, oh my God. Like, look out. Like that.
But that goes back to what I've been saying about move Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
Even if you get a third, this is the draft to do it. Yeah. Because it's so deep. And everybody's like, well, you're going to have all these inexperienced guys. Hey, you got to start over sometime.
Hey, and worst case, you pay a guy next year.
Yeah, I'd rather have a guy who is going to grow into the system. Hey, Coleman is 20. He's 20. He ain't even turned 21 till late May. There's plenty of time to develop. A lot of these guys are still young. And the Steelers like them young. So they can teach them and, less bad habits. And so I just think this is the year to do it. You need additional picks. Trade back in that first if you feel like, but I'm telling you, I'm hearing things as much as everybody loves Quentin Mitchell. And I do. He's not from a Power 5 school. And if it comes down between a choice, the superstar athletic guy and the guy from the proven Power 5, a lot of these guys are going to take the Power 5 guy.
Fine.
But here's the thing. What if it puts the Steelers in a situation at 17 or 18? They're like, we need to trade up and get this guy. This guy could be a superstar.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is it's going to be so interesting because there's too many. They could be 5 quarterbacks off before the Steelers pick, 5 quarterbacks. They could be 4 or 5 tackles. So the Steelers are going to get somebody good.
Yeah, and that's it. I think there is going to be a run on quarterbacks. I've heard that they, depending on the way people want to move up and down, I've heard that it could be as many as 5 in the first 12 to 14 picks.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Then you got Terran Arnold gone. Then you got Jackson. The Steelers aren't getting Jackson Powers Johnson, right? I'd even think the Eagles would trade ahead of the Steelers now. Like, I don't think they're fully in on Cam Jurgens replacing Kelsey, right? So, and to me, when I watched the Kelsey retirement press conference, I was just like, I feel like they're going to go all out to get like JPJ2. I just feel like they're doing that. Anyway, but so you got Terran Arnold at least gone. You have 5 quarterbacks gone. You'll probably have Alt gone. Alt will go before Fuaga because of his height, but that's dumb. Fuaga's the best tackle in this.
I'd rather have Fuaga, yes,
by a country mile. It's just better. He's better. He's going to be a better player. I get though that Alt's size is really, 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 textbook.
He's textbook, exactly.
Yeah, then you got a couple of wide receivers there, obviously in Harrison, Neighbors. Maybe Brian Thomas Jr., Adunze. But yeah, by count all those guys up that I'm talking about, we're at basically 14, 15, 16 blokes, depending on trying to think about live how many guys I've just said out loud. But by the time you get there, right, and you got Brock Bowers, he'll go in the first 20. Where he goes will be interesting. Yeah. Grant Barton might even go high if there's a particular team that needs that interior bloke. You'll have one of the tackles go pretty high, in terms of whether it's a guy like Newton or something like that, that being defensive tackles. So the Steelers are going to get their pick from one of the top 4 or 5 tackles or possibly a Quinion Mitchell. This is going to be the problem, though, because I said it, Steeler, I think it was Steeler Out West, one of our regular, channel members, said it to me in a comment the other day. He goes, I'm picking at 20, and he goes, these 6-7 guys on the board, who are you picking first? And I said, Quinion Mitchell straight away, no doubts. But part of me is like, the idea of getting a lineman with a 5th-year option is so enticing, but equally a cornerback. The top cornerbacks are going to be getting paid $25 million plus a year and already starting to do that. So that's why Daniel Jeremiah talks about Brock Bowers in an interesting point. And I think it's an interesting point across a multiple number of positions. It's why drafting an inside linebacker, as much as we love it, as much as the Steelers need it, is problematic in round one. Because whoever drafts Brock Bowers immediately is paying. If you draft him in the top 20, he's suddenly the 3rd or 4th best, highest paid tight end in the league. And he's not even played in the league yet, right? Yeah. And so that's why the picking a center in the first 20 picks it's almost a luxury, unless you're probably in the Steelers boat this year, because that position doesn't earn that amount of money. The investment that you're making is huge. You're better to trade back, get the multiple picks, and double down. So it is a really interesting situation for the Steelers of like, at 20, who do you pick? It's why I'm so for trading back. I'm always for trading back. But I think picking at 20 is I keep saying it, it's a crap spot because you're kind of out of the works on the top guys. As we saw last year, the Steelers had to trade up to 14 to get Broderick. So you're either going to miss them or you're overdrafting someone, like even if you really love him and you think he's a fit and good character and all the works, that he's got a first-round grade, but he might not be really top 20. So, I don't think they've got a choice but to trade back, really.
And they need more picks.
That's my point.
It only makes sense. I'm as much as I love Frazier, I don't want to trade back too far and have somebody sneak in front of you and take him, because now you got Eagles, Buffalo, Miami, just right off the top of my head are all wanting centers.
Yep. The Raiders, I think their centers are out. I think Los Angeles, who signed, I will say, Kevin Dotson to a 3-year, $48 million deal with a guarantee to 32.
He done cashed in. Yes, he did.
And
I'm happy for him. I'm happy for him. Regardless, he just couldn't make it work. It wasn't a good fit, whatever the reason. But he had an excellent season for the Rams, and I'm happy for the young man. Nothing personal with him at all.
No. Well, I also think they always play him out of position. I think he should be.
He should have. Yeah, he should have been on the right side. Yes.
Toddy says, "I don't want to trade Deontay traded." And I can understand that. I can understand that when we don't have necessarily the guys in the room right now. George Teston says, "I was hoping they'd get Leggett and Rattler in the 4th, but I doubt it now." Yeah. Where do you reckon Rattler will go? Because everyone's pretty happy with what he did at the combine. People saying his attitude's changed. I personally don't. I'm still higher on Michael Pratt out of Tulane, but
I thought Rattler the combine, but I think there was some measurable issues. Some rumors, I think he was smaller than they thought.
Yeah, he's shorter than they thought.
Yeah, sure. So I think he'll drop down. I think you're looking at a 5th or 6th on Rattler.
If he plays the Steelers, they got to shave his head. He looks so weird because he's so tanned.
Yeah,
and then he's got like the blonde curl. It just looks. He looks like he's from NSYNC or like another boy band. He's got that like Justin Timberlake, like early 2000. I don't know.
I just remember when he played for Oklahoma and he played Mountaineers. And I'm like, who's this Jackrabbit? Because he come out there with that, that blonde hair. And they was talking about he was going to be, he didn't have that great a game. And he never did hit like everybody thought he was going to at college.
Yeah.
So if he does anything in the pros, he's a late bloomer.
And he could well be. I mean, talent's talent, right? But Sean Mannon says Russ and KPA, it would be a very interesting QB room, actually. I just don't see Sierra lining up to go hang out in Pittsburgh. I just don't. They're too glitzy.
That's why you want him to go to Vegas.
I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
Vegas does make more sense.
Sean says, even if KP wins QB1, he hasn't stayed healthy for a full season. 100%. And that is why I think the Mason Kenny piece works better than what other people realize, like outside of the Steelers franchise realize. even Ryan Clark calling them out and stuff like that. Having two quarterbacks that know the Steelers, know those players, particularly in that new offensive system, is huge. But it is also why they got to draft a guy in the middle to late rounds. I mean, Joe Milton, man, I keep drafting him in like the 6th round, 7th round in mocks. Man, he's going in the 5th. That arm that he showed,
he's got a howitzer of an arm. He really does. I don't know about the rest of it, but that guy, he's got a great arm now, no doubt. But I think the Steelers are in a situation of their own making by bringing Matt Canada back, as we talked about before the season last year.
Yeah,
it stunted any growth from the offense in general, especially Kenny Pickett. Now, the problem they have is last year's when they should have found out what they had in Kenny Pickett. Now they still don't know. But guess what? The fans know. Half the fans say he's trash and that he's worthless and they hate him. The other half's like he was in a terrible system, terrible offensive coordinator. Give him a chance. Therein lies the problem. If he comes and he wins the position in the camp, everybody's going to say it's because he's a first-round pick. They give it to him. If he goes out there and he has a bad first half early in the season, it's going to be boo birds, people chanting Rudolph's name, or whoever the backup is. This is not going to be a pretty season. The only way this ends well is if what they did in the preseason last year, they do in the regular season and take all doubt away where people can't complain, because unless he plays like a top 10 quarterback next year, he will be booed and everybody's going to be clamoring for quarterback 2.
You and Steele's Reaper are reading from the same song sheet 100%.
It's the truth.
And it is. And you know what you said there? And Mark and I have talked about this a lot of times off there. The Steelers' own making. This is their own making.
They did. Yes, they did. Yes.
But it actually goes back further than that, right? They've compounded the problem. They should have said to Ben after 2019, hey, you're QB1, but if your elbow goes again, we don't want to put the franchise into purgatory, but like we had between you and Bradshaw, we are going to be pulling guys in. We're going to give you the weapons we can, but we are going to be looking at guys that we can build underneath you for when time comes or injury takes over, and we need a replacement there, right? They were almost forced to take Pickett at 20 when he became available. They virtually had no other choice.
I got to make a point here because I've heard this before. Here's the thing. Don't blame Ben.
I'm not blaming Ben. I'm blaming Colbert. I'm blaming Colbert.
I know you're not blaming Ben.
Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of people blame Ben. Blame Colbert.
Yeah.
Because Colbert thought that Rudolph, he had a first-round grade on him, remember?
Yep.
And he always thought with Ben, if something happens, Rudolph will take over. He's the same type of quarterback. Will be the same offense. It's going to be the same. And that was not true. By the time Rudolph got his opportunity, it was Canada's offense. Yeah. And it, as far as a true opportunity, not 2019.
Yeah.
And it, nobody could flourish in that offense. And so, I agree with that. They did need to improve the backup, but it would have still been probably okay with Rudolph. But when they hired Matt Canada, that was the mistake.
But
you hire a guy with no professional experience and could never make it work in college. And there was no reason to hire him.
But the problem was that the other reason why it wasn't going to work with Mason is that Mason and Ben, they didn't have a relationship. I think you can blame that on both of them. You can blame that on how the organization handled it. Mason was never going to sit there under Ben, and this is and that's the reality, right? And I've always been high on Jordan Love, and you look at what the Packers did between Favre to Rodgers now Jordan Love with the right O-line. I don't think he's going to be Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, but he is going to win a lot. They're going to win a lot of games in Green Bay, and they didn't handle it well either. But at least they've come out the other side with what looks like a solution. Whereas,
but they actually had a NFL caliber offensive coordinator.
Correct.
See, we're
I know,
looking at just the quarterback position.
I know, but I'm talking about the fact that they groomed a guy under the franchise guy, and we didn't do that.
Would you see what they made Kenny Rudolph do? They made him call and congratulate. Trubisky, after they signed him in free agency, they made him call and congratulate Kenny Pickett for being drafted. You don't make a guy do that. That's if he wants to do that, and it's a sign of leadership. But it's not up to the GM or ownership to tell a guy, call and congratulate this guy.
But should he have done that anyway in the spirit of the team?
Well, Trubisky's a great guy, but it bothered him. He even said it bothered him that they made him do it. That's what I'm saying. It was handled poorly.
Yeah, see, you know what though? I'm going to challenge, like not obviously you, but I'm going to challenge the take on that he's a nice guy, because he was well overdrafted, and everyone sat there and gave him all the accolades and all of that. Like, if you sign as a free agent in the NFL, and that is what the free agency in the NFL, unlike other sports, happens before the draft. If the best prospect at a position falls in the draft and that team wants to go out and get it, well, tough cookies. Like, that's the way it happens. Like, the whole convincing him to call him or whatever. But at that point,
they didn't make him go to Florida and all work out together. Now, Rudolph didn't go. But Pickett and Trubisky and the receivers.
Yeah, well, if I was Rudolph, I wouldn't have gone either. Because
I wouldn't either. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but Trubisky, knowing that his main competition was Pickett, he still worked out with him. Trubisky, everybody knows, is a good fellow. But I agree with him from the aspect of that's not how chemistry is developed in a roster. That's not how the standard is upheld. It cannot be forced. Some things are like the kangaroo court of team discipline. You have to have your leaders in the locker room do it. Keep the coaches out of it. And we used to have that on the Steelers, but not in the last, 7, 8 years. Those guys are gone. And now a lot of times the inmates are running the asylum. There's nobody in there to say, George Pickens, cool it. Deontay Johnson trying to get in a fight with quarterbacks at halftime, cut this crap out. There's no disciplinarian. There's nobody that can step up. Now, of course, if you did try to do that now, the NFL probably find out and they'd probably fine you.
See, this is why I think they should negotiate a deal sooner rather than later with Pat Freiermuth and anoint him, like do a 4 or 5 year deal with Pat Freiermuth that's flexible for the team, because obviously he's got concussion history and we don't want all the Darius Green 2.0, right? But they need someone leading that. I just think grow, like some of the, I will say this, right? Because no one in the live chat or you or I played professional football, right? Maybe someone else played a professional sport. I don't know about it. And maybe I'm talking out of my ass in that case. But some of the dramatics that we hear about this, I'm going to call it shit, right? All this crap, all this nonsense doesn't fly in the real world, right? Like if you are in a team at work and your company hires someone within your team to do something and it might take over a little bit of your workload, you can have challenges, you can talk to your managers about it, you can deal with that in a way, but you have to like it and lump it. Like the amount of guys that get all prima donna and dramatic about this crap, like I just think sometimes you're getting paid millions of dollars to play football. Like, I get it, but like it's like a call for, I wouldn't have re-signed if I knew that this was going to happen. Well, the Steelers wouldn't have re-signed you, mate, if they knew you were going to say Neal out the football game, because that's not how the Pittsburgh Steelers culture is. So some of this stuff fires me up a little bit.
Pittsburgh Toddy's got a comment talking about when we're saying that Cam won't step up. There's different type of leaders. Well, you had in the dynasty, you had Mean Joe, you had Jack Lambert, you had Mel Blount. There was multiple guys. Every generation, they've had guys. Greg Lloyd in the 90s. And you had guys who did it in different ways. TJ Watt will tell you he's not vocal.
No.
He stays out of things. He leads by example. He's very focused, and he don't get in the drama. Cam wants to be respected by everybody, but he's not an intimidating presence. He is like your grandpa on the team. They respect him to a point, but he doesn't have a lot of say and pull with them wide receivers when they started acting the fool. You got to have leaders at every
that's
level, and I don't
that.
think that is Cam's. Especially, he'll say it isn't. I know he's good at keeping the peace in a lot of things, and being that almost like father figure, grandpa figure, but he's not a disciplinarian. And the Steelers haven't had one. The last guy was probably Vince Williams, maybe a little bit.
Well, I think
now Minka Fitzpatrick last year tried, but he ended up getting in fights with him, and which happens sometimes. Grown men have disagreements, but he was already beat up. He was already playing out of position. He was not as effective last year because not only did he have to do all those things for a team that needed him because the front office let him down and didn't get a strong safety like they should have, and his body was beat down because of it as well, but he didn't have the same production as a ball hawk and make all the big plays, and so he wasn't getting the respect in the locker room he usually got. So, it affects a lot of things, not having those leaders in. So when you hear all these guys that I mentioned earlier, and you was talking about character, but if you look at them, they're team captain guys. They've got great leadership skills. These are the kind of guys that you need to have in there. They can set the tone in that locker room.
I like it, George. I like it. I think Minka would love to line up against DJ. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he would. I think he'd like to be in the ring, too.
Yeah. Ryan Leaf says, theoretically, if Kenny starts, if he starts slow, how many games would you give Kenny to figure it out? To me, that kind of depends on how the run game's going. I guess this is that whole win-loss situation. I think whoever you start the season with, you've got to commit between 4 and 6 games, depending on how bad they play. If someone has a 3-interception game, well, then you may have to pull them. But whoever they start the season with, to me, it also depends on when you're going to have your bye. But I think you
talked about 4 to 6 games before the show.
Yeah,
they needed to figure this out last year.
Correct.
Now it's on a tighter schedule, and everything is condensed. And so if he comes out and he doesn't perform, right off the bat, how much of a leash does he got? And it's also going to depend on, one, does he earn that starting position?
Correct.
Who's the backup? There's so many unknowns going on right now. So I think that, we have to strengthen the offensive line, regardless. What happens with this quarterback situation or anything else? There's positions they have to strengthen.
Fix the line first.
Exactly.
Fix the line first.
Then you will have a consistent running game and a better pass blocking. They still, even last year, blew some assignments and give up pressure right up the middle. Yeah. You say, well, why was Pickett always rolling to his left? And that's so stupid. Well, one of the problems is the pressure is coming up the middle. No quarterback is successful with consistent pressure up the middle.
Correct.
You got to keep the feet clean. Come around wide, then he can step up, run through, a gap, but he cannot have pressure coming up his face or the center getting planted in his lap, which with Green and with Cole last year, that happened way too much.
So before we live chat, fire up your questions, start putting them in because we want to end the show with a lot of Q&A on anything and everything. But I'm going to kick off the Q&A with a tough question for you, Shannon. And what you say now does not have to be how you feel in a month's time when I ask you the question again, because I'm going to ask you once a month, 3 times before it happens.
Okay.
Do you give Najee Harris the 5th-year option tag, which is due on May the 2nd? Off the top of my head.
Based on what we have Arthur Smith's offense now.
Yeah.
We know this. We know the plan is to strengthen this line.
Yep.
And lean on the running game. The 2-headed monster.
Yep.
We know his tag is what, 6 something?
Yeah, million? About 6.7, I think.
Yeah. In my opinion, with what he means to the team in the locker room, I think it's a no-brainer. You give him an extension.
Okay. So you just take the 5th-year option, or you say to him, hey, Najee, we're going to extend you instead?
I would do the 5th-year option.
See, I wouldn't. Interesting.
The reason why I would do the the 5th-year option is because I still want to see what this running back tandem can do with a competent quarterback, a competent offensive line, and a competent offensive coordinator. All that together, I think you could have something, because regardless if he has a big year, look at the salaries of running backs. Look at all the free agents. I mean, and look at all the guys that you could replace them with in the draft. The salary is going to stay low for running backs.
So it was interesting because Daniel Jeremiah was saying that he's spoken to a lot of GMs and they feel that the first 5 to 7 running backs that are free agents this year are better than anyone in the draft by a country mile, right? So as much as we say that about running backs, ultimately there's some really good free agents this year, and it's one of the best free agent running back class in a long time. Equally, running backs are incentivized to stay in college because of NIL now. So when they come out, they're going to have a lot of runs, a lot of mileage on the legs.
Yep.
To me, if you're worthy of the 5th-year option, and in this year particularly, if the first 4 or 5 free agents go for, let's say, an average of $5 million a year, right? There'll be some that get 6 or 7. There'll be some that get 4.5. Let's say it's an average of 5 to 5.5. Why am I paying Najee Harris 6.7 next year? Am I paying an extra million to 1.5 million just for his leadership? Like, that's a hefty price tag.
No, I wouldn't say that. Like, let's say, who's the running backs?
But I'm just saying, if you're going to sign him for 6.7 and 1, why don't you sign him for 10.5 for 2?
Yeah, but you got to say, how are them guys going to fit? Let's say you sign somebody else.
Yeah, so on the 2-year deal, though, you can pay less guaranteed than what you will have to for the 5th-year option. Because remember, the 5th-year option is everything bar the vet minimum guaranteed.
How are they going to fit in that Steeler locker room and in that behind that line and that lineup? Like, Henry, he's
no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying with Najee, we'll sign him for, instead of the 5th-year option, I'm saying you sign him for 2 years for like 10.5 instead of 1 year for like, I think it's 6.7 is his tag. Like, why would I?
But he'll be, is he 26
this year? I think he's 26 this year. I think he's 26 going on 27. When he came out, he was 23. So, yeah, he'll be turning 20. He's 26 or 20.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If maybe 2 years, but I have a feeling that when he hits 29 to 30, he's going to have a steep drop off.
But then he'll be up to your contract.
Well, I mean, if you're talking 2 years and to try to make a little bit smaller hit, that would be an option too. I
would rather them after free agency.
It's such a small amount compared to these other positions.
I know.
If it's $1 million, like say instead of 5 and 6 point something, I'm not really that worried about it. So that's why I would rather just do a year.
My problem is, let's say he thrives in the Arthur Smith offense.
Yeah.
This year you've still got Warren, but let's say then the next year he has a really good, because I think Arthur Smith will, fingers crossed, which will help Kenny Pickett, actually bring Najee into the short passing game, because he did do that with Henry at times, right?
Yeah.
So if they do that, that is going to unlock a part of Najee's game that we haven't seen since when Ben was last year, which was Najee's rookie year.
Yeah.
So at that point, I feel like Najee's value will go through the roof, because if you only sign him on the 5th-year deal, then you're either signing at a premium on multi-years because you want it, versus another team that might go, we've got a decent young running back, but we're a Super Bowl contender. We'll spend $7 or $8 million a year plus on, or $9 million, because the cap's going to keep going out of this world, $10 million on Najee Harris to give us a dual threat running back situation and go win a Super Bowl for another team. So like, I worry that if you don't, right now is the time to strike when you've got the best free agent class of running backs that you've got, because Najee can sit there and go, well, this is the best free agent running backs, and this is what the market kind of is right now. I can sign with the Steelers. I can stay there for the next couple of years. Mike Tomlin loves me. The franchise loves me. Boom. Like, I just think the Steelers would be stupid. Like, why would you spend $6.7 million for a 1-year deal on a player when you could probably spend 10 or 11 and sign the guy for 2? Like, to me, it makes sense if you actually believe in him. Because if you don't, my thing is kind of, if you're not willing to sign him for 2 years, why are you signing him on a 5th-year option? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you either know.
I know what you're saying. I don't see him having the kind of season that's going to make him, incredibly valuable to get up into those numbers that you were talking about. I think even
okay,
if
then he's not worthy. But then he's not worthy. But then he's not worthy of the fifth year option because you're going to be paying him that money in 2025.
Like I said, I like shorter deals almost always with running backs, especially.
Same. I'm not asking for two. I'm just saying
when they're getting to that age range.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I'm only being, I'm being facetious as well about it. But
I mean, it's a little bit of a devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Screwed if you do, screwed if you don't type deal. But I just think that I would give him that. I wouldn't commit more long term. I would give him the deal because they have it. Everybody talks about the salary cap went up. The quarterback salaries are now going to be $60 million a year.
I know.
It's not going to. It's going to affect quarterbacks, defensive linemen. It's going to affect offensive tackles, wide receivers, quarterbacks. Everybody else is basically the same. You really ain't going up much.
Yeah. 100%. Oh, and it will affect I've heard that it's going to affect the lower end of the market as well because, where guys are getting just over $1 million, there might be a team that's got like 1.1 versus a team that's got 1.2 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's 10%.
It matters a lot to them guys.
Yeah. So the middle, like everything in life these days, the middle hollows out as the salary cap goes up. Right?
The bottom and the top, everybody else is like it.
It does kind of mean that's where voidable years start becoming a thing. And I hate robbing Peter to pay Paul. I hate that concept, but like it does mean that you can muck around with voidable years as well when the cap's going up because it becomes a smaller percentage theoretically over a multi-year period. Absence of any Q&A questions, so live chat, throw in any questions there before we wrap it up over the next sort of 6 to 7 minutes. But Shannon, was there anything else that you wanted to get off the chest from a Steelers perspective this week?
Well, I'm anxious for free agency to get here. Not just because, of all the quarterback talk, but every free agent, every guy who is a salary cap casualty right now. And, they're hitting the market for a reason. And it's always like, oh, the Steelers need him and the Steelers need this one. And, well, the reason they're hitting the market is because there's cheaper, younger options in the draft. So, in a lot of positions that the Steelers really need, it's a good year because there's a lot of talent in the draft at wide receiver, let's say. And there's a lot of free agent talent out there at strong safety, which will drive a lot of prices down. Steelers might get Terrell Edmonds, especially if they do a multi-year deal. They could get him on the low, on the cheap.
I still think they need a young guy to back him up, though.
Well, I mean, I don't know what's available in the draft because I really haven't paid a lot of attention. In the later
James Williams.
Well, yes, we talked about him. Yes,
he tested heavier than I thought he would too. Actually, like he didn't help himself a bit safety versus linebacker.
Yeah, he didn't have a good combat.
Good,
not like I thought he would.
Good. I didn't think he was going to blow it out of the park. I didn't think so. He's a tape guy. Steel's Reaper says gut feeling on who they get at 20. I'm going to go Mims.
There's some teams ahead of the Steelers that's really interested in Mims. I think I'm just going to throw it out there. I think that they're going to see I think there'll be some attempts to trade back. I don't know if it'll happen.
Yeah.
It would not shock me with JPJ off the board that they take Frazier at 20.
As I said to you in the comments, I hope they don't because I feel like that's all we'll ever talk about ever again.
No, I'm just saying that I really believe that he is one of the safest picks. I believe he's a 10-year starter, barring injury. He would solidify as they have to that line. And there's some guys there, I would rather see tackle first. I'm just afraid they're going to miss out on Frazier if they ain't careful.
Center or tackle in the first round if you're forced between the positions?
I don't like
depends on who's on the
the free
board.
agent options at all. So, and there's really the top two centers that I want. So there's more tackle depth in this draft than there is center substantially. And so like I said, I would take center.
My thing is, if they take center at 20, they have to take a tackle at 51.
Unless they move up.
I think it's going to be very hard to move up in the second because there's like 40 to 50 really good players. And if you're outside of those picks, everyone knows it. I think it will be a lot hard. You will need a second round pick next year or a third round pick next year plus your second or your third this year. I think it is going to be very hard to trade up. And you look at that from the perspective of we didn't trade back last year, and Omar Khan's talked about this because they didn't feel that anyone was offering them what it would be worth.
Well, that's the point, yeah.
So, I mean, I got a video coming out on the channel that everyone stay tuned for about, I know I'm high on the guy, and I've talked about him a bit when we've done tackles and all the rest of it. But I've been going back over some of the stuff that I noted down during the last 2 seasons with Christian Jones. And honest to God, I mean, Daniel Jeremiah's talking about him even scraping the back end of the second. I mean, Christian Jones from Texas could really be the answer for us at right tackle, which allows you to go get cornerback or, center at 20 and make that decision on Frazier. I'm really high on Christian Jones, but I'm keen to save all those comments for the video coming out on the weekend.
Well, that's why, we talk about the depth at tackle, the depth at wide receiver, the depth at cornerback in this draft, where a huge area of need is center, and there's not that depth. So that's what, the kid Morgan out of Arizona.
Yeah, Jordan Morgan.
Yeah, you could get him a little later. Of course, he's moving up on some people's.
So he's moved back on a lot of my boards. I don't think the gap between him and Christian Jones play-wise is that high, except Morgan, I think you can play either side. I mean, not that you can't play Christian Jones either side, but he played a lot better at right. And you want to move Broderick to left anyway. I think Morgan will be gone in the first 38 picks. So, still out.
There's one question here.
Yeah, bring it up.
Yeah.
So Still Out West said, why do you think the Steelers kept pushing Dotson on the left side and now he signed a 3-year mega deal with the Rams? Well, I mean, James Daniels, eh?
It was called a mistake.
Facts, Shannon, facts.
No, I mean, really. I mean,
yeah.
We talked about this. I wrote probably 3 or 4 articles during his time with the Steelers about why do they keep forcing him on the left side. Because if you watch, every time he had a breakdown or a missed assignment, it was off balance or he used improper footwork because he was not a natural for the left side.
Yeah. Fuzzy Monkey says, and it might be the last question if another one doesn't come through pretty quickly, but second round, 2 rookie O-linemen doesn't sound good. I'd rather see a veteran center and a rookie tackle. I get that sentiment too. I mean, Shannon, I know he had a bit of an injury concern, but have you seen anything of Connor Williams? Because I quite like Connor Williams. He played at Miami last year when he was healthy.
Well, again, there definitely was injury, but Miami, they seen the handwriting on the wall. I mean, it's like a core 4 getting snatched up by the Patriots, and Mason Cole will get picked up. But that's not the answer. That's as I call him, a bridge player to get you to, I mean, everybody's so worried about what's the record going to be next year. I'm worried about the execution. I'm worried about improvement, sustainable improvement, seeing Arthur Smith. It's going to take some time. This is not a Super Bowl season next year.
Yep.
You look at the odds in Vegas. All I'm saying is, I'll take 2 young wide receivers. I'll take 2 young offensive linemen. If they're building, they're all going to be about the same age. The Steelers' offense is very young. There's no reason to bring in an elder statesman because it ain't like you're going to be competing for the Super Bowl. The Houston Texans were very young last year, and they overachieved. It can happen.
What happens though if JPJ2 goes at 15 or 16 to the Seahawks? The Eagles trade up from, I think they're picking 23 ahead of the Steelers to like 19 and go get Frazier. What happened? Like what do we do then?
That's going to be a big problem. I mean, because Van Braun, a lot of people don't realize he's got good length, but he's got 31 and something inch arms. That's not. I mean, we've seen Kendrick Green. Centers with under 32-inch arms are rarely successful.
At his height, I mean, I know my arm. Like, I did that the other night. I did my own little combine, and I started measuring all my different things, and I was like,
I don't need to hear about all your things.
No, but it was funny because I thought I had smaller hands than what I actually have, and I was like, oh, so because I had like 8, I've got over 8.5, kind of like almost like 8 2/3, and I was like, wow. So when you've got a 6'5", I think there was one of the defensive tackles that when we were doing the reactions, and I'm like, he's 6'5" and 300 pounds, and he's got an 8.5-inch hand. That's a very small hand.
Yeah.
It's a little like T-Rex guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Same as the arms. Like, I think I've got 31.5. 31, I think it is, or 31.5. I mean, I am just under 6'2", but it's just funny when you think about those measurables as well. Like, I think it was Mims that I heard. I might be wrong in this. 11-inch hands.
Well, no, Frazier is 10 and 7/8, so he is almost 11-inch, and wrestling hands. Now, anybody's ever wrestled, these guys, when they get a grip on you, you're in trouble. When he grabs you, it's over.
That's it.
But they were talking here. Pittsburgh Toddy is from Tucson, so he says Morgan is a beast.
Yeah, I went back to him when he said probably early second round. Yeah, look, I like him. I just think there's going to be a lot of guys, like, I think Cooper DeJean will be a second round draft pick. I think there's going to be a lot of guys in that first 8. There's probably going to be 10 or 12 guys trying to squeeze into the first 8 picks of that early second round. I think Morgan's one of those guys. It'll depend. Like, Morgan and Guyton are probably fighting right now to see who scrapes into the back of the first when you look at the tackles.
Yeah.
But also it depends. If there's a run on tackles, there's more than 5 teams that need a tackle. So there's 7 or 8 tackles at least that are worthy of a first-round grade. So if there's 5 or 6 tackles that go in the first 20 picks, like we're talking about, then you're going to see 2 or 3 more go between 20 and 32 as well, because you're worried about how – this is it. And Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks are really right. They talk about this every other show, is that literally the draft will be very dependent on where the runs happen and then where teams have got the evaluation. So if they're like, oh, this guy's between, this grade and this grade, but they were running out, we're going to take
that's where the runs happen.
It's classic economics. It's,
I got to get them now.
And supply, and you got to figure out the draft equilibrium. And
I always told my son it's important to always have a plan. I mean, it really is, but you got to be flexible. It's got to be fluid. You have plan A, but if that don't work, you got plan B and plan C, because, that's how life is. And the draft's no different. So,
but then sometimes you got to go for broke as well, so.
Well, think outside the box.
That's it. That is it. All right, well, with that, we are going to wrap up this week's Steelers Global Perspective. There'll be some more content coming out over the weekend, of course, from the channel. I want to thank Shannon for making the time in his evening to do a live. Awesome chat from the live, in the live chat, guys. Awesome. So many good to see you guys in there. We definitely appreciate you spending your night hanging out with us. Hope was good stuff. Throw out any more questions as well. And just equally, I don't probably say it enough, but if you've got a question or something you want us to address in a show, or you want me to address in one of the other shows, throw it in and say, Matty, I'd love to see a show on XYZ, or Matty and Shannon, can you guys talk about this on your next show, whatever. We will try and do that. We are open. We want to produce content that you guys love. So hit that like button if you like the show. hit the don't like button if you didn't like the show.
Don't hit the don't like button.
No. Everyone's perfect on this channel. Likewise, if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed what you saw, think about hitting that sub button. You'll get all our live alerts and all that. We will be coming out with, we'll be announcing what we're doing for the draft at the moment. Marky D and I are talking about what we'll do across that, working out that sort of stuff between TDU and his channel, Steel Nation Australia. Likewise, Shannon and I are working out what his commitments are elsewhere, but versus what we can do here. Going to try and get Sean on as well, Big G, that Shannon does a podcast with on Steel Curtain Network. He and I think hit it off pretty well in terms of how we think about the draft. I think there's also some debates because there's some things that he will not like, that he does not think is facts, that I've got some opinions on. But that's all the same. It's all about good content for you guys.
Yep.
Hope you enjoyed. We had a bit of debate today.
Yeah.
But yeah, hope you all have a great Friday, great weekend, more content to come. Free agency is about to begin. Then it's full draft. And then we're rolling, right? We're on our way to September. So absolutely pumped. Thanks, George. Thanks, Daredevil. Thank you for the nice comments there. And as always, go Steelers.